everything. One day and realizing the world has moved on without you. Not because you lacked potential, but because you stayed the same while everything around you evolved. Everything. In a world changing faster than ever, improvement isn't optional anymore, it's survival. The people who rise, the people who win, everything. The people who build lives they're proud of. They all share one truth: they refuse to be left behind. This audiobook is your call to rise, to sharpen your edge, everything, and to step into the version of yourself that the future demands. Because the uncomfortable truth is this: you either get better or you get replaced. And today you choose to get better. Everything. The world has always been in motion, but today that motion feels different. Faster, sharper, more unforgiving. Everything. You can feel it the moment you open your eyes each morning. Technology evolving before you even understand the last update. Opportunities appearing and disappearing in the span of a week. Everything. Entire industries rising and collapsing in what feels like a single breath. It's as if someone hit fast forward on life, and the people who thrive are the ones who realized it early. Everything, the rest. They're still trying to catch up to a world that no longer waits. Most people don't notice how quickly things change until the consequences show up. It happens slowly at first. Everything. A skill that used to impress no longer stands out. A job that once felt secure suddenly becomes shaky. A routine that worked for years now feels outdated. And before they know it, everything. They're standing still in a world that has moved 100 miles ahead. They wonder why life feels heavy, why progress feels hard, why everything seems slightly out of reach. Everything. But the truth is simple. They stayed the same while everything else evolved. Awareness is the moment everything shifts. Because once you see the pace of the world clearly, everything, you can't unsee it. You begin to understand that comfort has a cost, and that cost is your potential. You begin to realize that doing nothing is not neutral, it is decline in slow motion. Everything. And when that realization hits, it shakes you awake in a way nothing else can. Think about how quickly things have changed in just the last decade. Everything. A teenager with a smartphone can build a business that reaches millions. A skill you learned in school might already be outdated. Everything. Jobs that once required 10 people can now be done by one person with the right tools. New technologies create openings for those willing to adapt, and close doors for those who refuse. Everything. The rules are rewritten every single year, and the people who win are the ones who learn how to rewrite themselves along the way. But here's the part that too many people overlook. Everything. Fast change is not the enemy. It is the greatest opportunity of our lifetime, if you wake up and use it. You don't need to be the smartest. You don't need to be the most talented. Everything. You don't need to come from privilege or advantage. You simply need to stay in motion. The world rewards those who keep moving, keep learning, keep stretching their limits. Progress, everything, more than ever, belongs to the adaptive. Take the story of a man named Yusuf. He worked a stable job for years, predictable, familiar, comfortable, everything. He believed he was safe because nothing had changed around him for so long. But one day everything flipped. Everything. His company began using new technology that made half of the tasks in his department unnecessary. Instead of learning, instead of adjusting, instead of preparing, everything. He kept doing things the way he always had. He was convinced his experience alone would protect him. But experience is no shield when the world moves faster than your willingness to evolve. Everything. Within a year, the role he held for 15 years was gone. It wasn't personal. It wasn't unfair. It was reality. The kind that arrives quickly for those who ignore the signs. Everything. Now contrast that with Amina, who worked in a similar environment but made a different choice. When she saw new software being introduced, she didn't resist it. She didn't complain. Everything. She didn't cling to the comfort of her old routine. She took online courses. She practiced even when it felt confusing. She stayed after hours to master the new systems. Everything. While others resisted the change, she became the person who trained them. When the company restructured, she wasn't replaced, she was promoted. Everything. Because she didn't stay still when the world moved forward, she moved with it. That is the difference awareness makes. The world didn't change for one and not the other. Everything. They both faced the same future. But one was awake and the other was asleep. One understood the speed of change and the other hoped it would slow down. The world doesn't slow down. Everything. But you can speed up. The first step is simple: open your eyes to where you are. Not where you used to be, not where you wish you were. Where you are right now. Everything. It takes honesty to admit that your habits might be outdated, that your skills might need sharpening, that your comfort might be costing you more than you think, everything. It takes courage to look at your reflection and say, I need to do better. But that moment, that awareness, that truth, it is the beginning of every breakthrough you will ever have. Everything. Think of your life like a moving train. If you pause for too long, the train doesn't wait. It keeps going. And the longer you delay, the harder it becomes to jump back on. Everything. Improvement is not about perfection. It's about staying on the train. Small steps, small upgrades, small shifts in the way you think, act, and choose. Everything. Those little changes compound faster than you expect in a world that rewards momentum. Everything. Sometimes we hold ourselves back because we think growth requires something huge. A dramatic transformation, a perfect plan, a long list of resources. But improvement is not always loud. Everything. Growth is not always dramatic. Most of the time, it is quiet, subtle, almost invisible in the moment. It's choosing to learn for 20 minutes instead of scrolling for 2 hours. Everything. It's picking up a book instead of waiting for motivation to strike. It's asking more questions, seeking more knowledge, experimenting with new ways instead of clinging to familiar ones. Everything. These small decisions build the future you want while others remain stuck in the past they refuse to leave. Awareness also means understanding that every day you delay self-growth. Everything. You widen the gap between who you are and who you could be. And the world notices. Opportunities notice. People notice. The future notices. Every day, everything. Someone somewhere is improving while someone else is making excuses. Everything. Someone is learning while someone else is stuck in the comfort of, I'll start later. Someone is rising while someone else is staying exactly where they are. Everything. And whether you realize it or not, these small daily choices determine who gets ahead and who gets left behind. There is no shame in having fallen behind. Everything. What matters is that you stop pretending the world will slow down for you. It won't. But it will open its doors to you the moment you start moving again. You are not too late. Everything. You are not stuck. You are not disqualified. You are simply one decision away from catching up, from accelerating. Everything. From rising above the version of yourself who settled for less than what you were capable of. Because the world may be fast, everything. But your ability to adapt is faster, once you choose to awaken it. The truth is, life becomes easier when you align yourself with the speed of change. Everything. When you stop resisting the new and start embracing it. When you stop fearing growth and start seeking it. Everything. When you stop holding on to who you were and start preparing for who you are becoming. The moment you decide to evolve with the world instead of against it. Everything. Everything? Absolutely everything becomes possible. Awareness is your advantage. Awareness is your starting point. Awareness is the quiet voice inside you saying, I deserve to grow. Everything. I deserve to advance. I deserve to rise. And when you listen to that voice, you activate the one thing the world respects more than anything: progress. Everything. Your breakthrough will never begin by accident. It begins right here in this awareness, in this understanding. Everything. In this moment where you recognize just how quickly life moves and how ready you are to move with it. When you think about your future, it's easy to imagine outcomes, success, everything, security, growth, opportunity, without thinking deeply about the skills that must carry you there. But the truth is simple: your future doesn't respond to your dreams, everything. It responds to your abilities. It bends toward what you can do, how you think, how you adapt, and how well you navigate the challenges that come your way. Everything. If you want a future you're proud of, you must build the skills that future depends on. And the sooner you begin, the easier that future becomes. Everything. There's a moment in everyone's life when they realize that talent alone isn't enough. Maybe it hits you when you're applying for a job and notice the world has moved forward. Everything. Maybe it hits you when younger people seem sharper, faster, more fluent in the language of technology and change. Everything. Maybe it hits you when life demands something from you that you've never practiced. In that moment, you understand that to stay relevant, to stay powerful, everything, and to stay in control of your destiny, you must upgrade yourself, deliberately, consistently, and without waiting for permission. Human potential isn't something you unlock once. Everything. It's something you build, piece by piece, like a toolkit, and every skill you develop becomes another tool you can rely on when life gets unpredictable. But to build these tools, everything, you first need clarity. You need to know which skills matter, which ones shape your future the most, and which ones separate those who thrive from those who simply survive. Everything. The first set of skills are mental skills. the invisible engines behind every decision you make. Think about focus, for example. Everything. Focus is the ability to keep your mind on the work that matters, even when distractions are screaming for your attention. In a world built to steal your concentration, everything, being someone who can stay locked in is a superpower. It's the difference between finishing what you start and being pulled in 1,000 directions. Everything. It's the reason some people make progress while others stay stuck at the starting line. Attention is currency, and the people who control their attention control their future. Everything. Then there's adaptability, the skill of staying flexible in a world that changes daily. You've probably noticed that nothing stays the same for long. Everything. The job you trained for may not exist in 10 years. The technology you use today will be outdated tomorrow. Even your relationships' routines and responsibilities shift as life evolves. Everything. Adaptability isn't just about accepting change. It's about adjusting quickly, learning quickly, and moving forward without fear. Everything. It's the skill that keeps you relevant when the world keeps rewriting the rules. Another essential mental skill is problem solving. The ability to look at a challenge and say, everything. There is a way through this, even when it isn't obvious. People who succeed rarely have the easiest path. They simply refuse to stop at the first obstacle. Everything. They look at problems as puzzles, not walls. They tap into creativity, logic, patience, and resilience. When you strengthen your problem-solving skills, everything, you train your mind to become a generator of solutions instead of a collector of excuses. Then come the emotional skills, often overlooked. Everything. Yet they determine more of your success than almost anything else. Emotional intelligence is one of them. It's the ability to understand your own emotions without letting them control you. Everything. And the ability to read others so you can communicate, influence, and connect. It's the reason some people lead and others follow. Everything. It's the reason some people build strong relationships while others struggle. When you develop emotional intelligence, you gain the power to navigate conflict, maintain composure. Everything. And see situations clearly, even when emotions run high. One of the most valuable emotional skills is resilience, the strength to recover quickly when life knocks you down. Everything. Because life will knock you down, no one escapes that. But the people who rise again, the people who refuse to let setbacks define them, the people who say, everything. This is not where my story ends, are the ones who achieve more than they ever imagined. Resilience doesn't make life easier, it makes you stronger. Everything. It turns adversity into a teacher and failure into fuel. And then there's confidence, not the loud kind, not the ego-driven performance, but the quiet everything. Steady belief in your ability to handle whatever comes your way. Real confidence doesn't come from compliments or achievements. It comes from competence. Everything. It comes from knowing you have the skills to execute, the discipline to follow through, and the courage to keep trying. When you build the skills your future needs, everything, confidence becomes a natural byproduct. Finally, there are the practical skills, the things you can do, the abilities that translate directly into real-world results. Everything. These are the skills that open doors, create income, build opportunities, and make you valuable. Think about communication. In every job, every business, every relationship, everything. Communication determines whether people hear you, trust you, and follow you. Being able to express your ideas clearly, confidently, and persuasively isn't optional. It's essential. Everything. Or consider financial literacy, the ability to manage, grow, and protect your money. Many people work hard their entire lives only to stay broke because they never learned how money works. Everything. They know how to earn, but not how to keep. They know how to spend, but not how to grow. The future belongs to people who understand money as a tool, not a mystery. Everything. Another practical skill is digital fluency. Whether you like it or not, the world is becoming more digital every day. Everything. The people who thrive aren't always the smartest. They're the ones who can navigate technology without fear. They can learn software, understand online systems, everything, and adapt to new tools quickly. You don't need to be a tech expert. You just need to be capable, curious, and ready to learn. But here's the real advantage. Skills compound. Everything. Every skill you add makes the next skill easier to learn. Every new ability increases your value. And every upgrade you make to yourself changes the opportunities you attract. Everything. Skills are leverage. They multiply your potential. Think of your future like a garden. If you plant nothing, nothing grows. If you plant seeds once and never water them, everything dies. Everything. But if you plant the right seeds, nurture them consistently, and give them time, they grow into something strong, something valuable, something beautiful. Skills are the seeds of your future. Everything. Your effort is the water. Your discipline is the sunlight. And your persistence is the patience that allows everything to bloom. You don't need to master everything at once. Everything. Start with one skill. Then another. Then another. A person who improves one skill every few months is unrecognizable after a year, unstoppable after 3. Everything. And completely transformed after 5. That's how you stay ahead. That's how you avoid being replaced. Everything. You become the person who can do what others can't because you invested in yourself when others didn't. Progress doesn't come from waiting. It comes from sharpening your edge. Everything. From choosing growth over comfort. From deciding that your future deserves more than your past. When you build the skills your future depends on, you stop fearing what tomorrow might bring. Everything. Instead, you walk into tomorrow prepared, capable, and ready for anything. Discipline is rarely loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. Everything. And it doesn't come with fireworks or applause. It's quiet, almost invisible. It happens in the dark early hours when no one is watching, in the small choices you make throughout the day. Everything, and in those private conversations you have with yourself. The ones where comfort tries to negotiate its way in. And this chapter is about that exact battle. Everything. The tug-of war between the life you want and the comfort that pulls you away from it. There comes a moment in every person's life where they realize that comfort, while soothing, everything, is also destructive. It feels good in the moment, but it steals your potential one quiet decision at a time. You hit snooze one more morning. You skip one more workout. Everything. You put off one more project. And every time, comfort whispers, you can do it later. But later becomes a pattern, and the pattern becomes your identity. Everything. You don't fall behind all at once. You fall behind in inches. And the only force capable of pulling you forward again is discipline. Most people think discipline is harsh, rigid, everything, or cold. But discipline isn't punishment. Discipline is a form of self-respect. It's the decision to act in alignment with the future you want, rather than the mood you're in. Everything. Think about that. Your mood changes constantly. Some days you feel unstoppable. Some days you feel exhausted. Some days you want to conquer the world. Some days you want to disappear. Everything. If your future depends on your mood, you will never win. But if your future depends on your discipline, you become someone who rises regardless of how you feel. Everything. I once heard a story of a young man who desperately wanted to change his life. He dreamed of being in shape, starting a business, improving his mindset. The usual list of ambitions. Everything. But every day, he ran into the same wall. He didn't feel like it. He didn't feel like waking up early. He didn't feel like learning new skills. Everything. He didn't feel like exercising after work, and he told himself the same comforting lie over and over again. I'll start when I feel motivated. But weeks passed. Months passed. Everything. Nothing changed. And one night, sitting alone in his room, he realized something that hit him so hard it felt physical motivation wasn't coming. It wasn't going to magically show up. Everything. Knock on his door and drag him into the life he wanted. He had been waiting for a feeling when he should have been building a habit. That is the turning point most people never reach. Everything. They keep waiting for motivation, but motivation is unreliable, unpredictable, unstable. Discipline is the opposite. Everything. Discipline is a choice you make again and again until it becomes automatic. And the magic of discipline is this: at first it feels difficult, then it feels normal. Everything. And eventually, it feels easier than breaking your routine. What once required effort becomes your default mode. When you begin shaping your life around discipline instead of comfort, everything, you start noticing something incredible. Small habits compound. One healthy meal won't change your life, but 7 days of healthy meals will shift your energy. Everything. One workout won't transform your body, but 6 weeks of consistency will change how you carry yourself. 1 hour of focused work won't build your dream career. Everything. But daily deep work will reshape your entire future. This is why discipline matters, because small actions repeated consistently don't stay small. They grow into something powerful. Everything. And you don't need to radically overhaul your life in one day. In fact, you shouldn't. The people who try to change everything at once usually burn out, crash, everything, and retreat back into old patterns. Real discipline begins with one simple decision: to be slightly better today than you were yesterday. Not perfect, not extraordinary, just better. Everything. If you choose one area of your life to improve, even a tiny shift, and stick with it, the momentum will begin to build. Imagine waking up just 15 minutes earlier each day. Everything. 15 minutes doesn't sound like much, but over a year, that adds up to more than 90 hours of extra time. Time you can use to read, to reflect, to plan, to grow. Everything. Imagine doing a 10-minute workout daily. That's 60 hours of physical improvement in a year. Imagine saving just a small amount of money each week. That becomes a safety net. Everything. A foundation, a mindset shift. Discipline is not about drastic actions. It's about intentional, consistent ones. But make no mistake, discipline will challenge you. Everything. There will be mornings when the bed feels too warm, nights when you feel too tired, and moments when your old habits beg you to return. Everything. These are the defining moments. The moments where discipline is forged. You don't build discipline when it's easy. You build it when it's inconvenient. Everything. When you choose to act even though it would be much easier not to. Every time you follow through, even in a small way, you strengthen the muscle of self-trust. Everything. And that's something comfort can never give you. Think of someone you admire, a leader, a creator, an athlete, a mentor. What do they all have in common? It's not luck. Everything. It's not talent alone. It's not perfect conditions. It's discipline. They built routines that protected their growth. They created systems that eliminated guesswork. Everything. They built habits that turned success from an occasional event into a predictable pattern. Routines and systems aren't about restricting your life. They're about freeing your mind. Everything. When you know what time you wake up, when you work, when you rest, when you learn, when you train, your brain stops negotiating with itself. Everything. The more automatic your productive habits become, the less mental energy you waste trying to find motivation. Structure enhances freedom. It gives you clarity, direction, and momentum. Everything. You might be thinking, but I've tried routines before and always ended up breaking them. And that's normal. Routines aren't supposed to be perfect. Everything. They're supposed to guide you. The goal is not to follow a rigid schedule without fail. The goal is to build a lifestyle that supports your growth. If you miss a day, everything. You don't start over, you continue. Discipline isn't about perfection, it's about consistency. Everything. Let me share another example. A woman who wanted to write a book but couldn't make herself sit down to write. For years, she told herself she needed longer blocks of time, more energy, everything, more clarity. One day, frustrated with her own excuses, she made a commitment: 10 minutes a day. That's it, 10 minutes of writing, no more, no less. It felt almost too easy. Everything. But she stuck to it. 10 minutes became 20, 20 became 30. And 1 year later, she finished her book, a dream that had been stalled for years. Everything. Completed because she stopped chasing perfect conditions and embraced disciplined consistency. You have your own version of that dream. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your finances. Everything. Maybe it's your career, your mindset, your relationships, your education. Whatever it is, discipline is the bridge that will take you from wanting it to living it. Everything. There will be days when you feel strong and focused, and there will be days when everything feels heavy. But discipline doesn't depend on how you feel. It depends on who you are becoming. Everything. Every time you choose discipline, you cast a vote for the future you. And the more votes you cast, the stronger that identity becomes. Yes, comfort will always try to pull you back. Everything. It's familiar. It's easy. It feels safe. But comfort is not where your greatness lies. Comfort is where dreams go to sleep. Discipline, steady, daily, everything. Often unglamorous discipline is where you build the life you know you're capable of. And as you continue this journey, something powerful begins to shift. Everything. You stop seeing discipline as something you have to do and start seeing it as something you get to do. You realize that discipline is not restricting your life. It's designing it. Everything. It's choosing your future over your impulses. It's choosing growth over ease. It's choosing to live intentionally rather than reacting to whatever life throws your way. Everything. If you commit to even a handful of small disciplined actions every day, you'll start feeling something remarkable: control. Control over your time. Control over your habits. Everything. Control over your direction. Control over your destiny. And when you feel in control, you become unstoppable. Everything. There is a moment in every person's life when they realize that the only thing truly holding them back is the story they keep repeating in their own mind. Not the world, not the economy, everything. Not the people around them. Just the quiet, familiar voice that whispers, "Stay where you are. Don't risk it. Don't change too much. And it's in that moment, everything. When you finally see the cage for what it is, that the possibility of real growth begins. Because the truth is, growth never starts on the outside. It starts in the mind, everything. Long before your circumstances shift, long before your results show up, long before anyone else believes in you, everything. It begins with a decision to refuse the limitations you once accepted as truth. Most people don't fail because they're incapable. Everything. They fail because they carry mental ceilings they never question. They assume their past defines their future. They assume their mistakes are proof of their limits. Everything. They assume that struggling means they're not meant for more. But growth-oriented people see struggle differently. They understand something powerful, that every setback, everything, every challenge, every uncomfortable moment is actually shaping them, stretching them, preparing them for the next level. They don't run from difficulty. They look at it and think, everything. This is where I sharpen myself. Think back to a time when something didn't go your way. Maybe you started a project and it fell apart. Everything. Maybe you trusted someone and they disappointed you. Maybe you tried to change a habit and kept slipping back into your old patterns. Everything. Most people interpret these moments as signs that growth is too hard. But if you look closer, you'll see something else. Every setback revealed a weakness that needed strengthening. Everything. A mindset that needed shifting. A belief that needed upgrading. These moments weren't failures. They were invitations. The question is whether you accepted them. Everything. There's a story of a young athlete who trained tirelessly every morning. Rain or shine, he showed up. But whenever it came time to compete, he froze. Everything. His coach sat him down one day and said, "Your body is ready, but your mind is still fighting the battles you lost years ago." Everything. You're allowing yesterday's version of yourself to decide who you are today. And something clicked. Everything. Because it's not enough to physically show up. You have to mentally show up too. You have to rewrite the narrative. Everything. You have to see yourself as someone capable of winning before the world ever sees the evidence. This is the mindset of constant growth. It's not about perfection. Everything. It's not about having everything figured out. It's about choosing to improve, even when you feel uncertain. It's about refusing to let mistakes define the next chapter. Everything. It's about viewing discomfort as the price of evolution rather than the signal to stop. Growth is uncomfortable because it requires you to outgrow the person you've been. Everything. And the mind always resists what threatens its familiarity, even if that familiarity is the very thing holding you back. Everything. You might notice how the mind reacts the moment you try to break an old pattern. You decide to eat healthier, and suddenly your brain craves everything you said you'd avoid. Everything. You decide to wake up earlier, and your mind creates a dozen excuses to stay in bed. You decide to take a risk in your career, and fear floods you with imagined failures. Everything. This isn't weakness, it's biology. The mind is designed to conserve energy, minimize danger, and stay consistent with what it already knows. Growth demands the opposite: energy, everything, uncertainty, inconsistency with your past. So of course it feels hard, but that difficulty is not a sign to stop, it's a sign to continue. Everything. Every person who has ever achieved anything remarkable shares one thing in common: they learned how to keep going when their mind begged them to stop. Everything. They learned how to see resistance as a message, not a barrier. And the message is always the same: you are entering unfamiliar territory. Keep going. Everything. This is where transformation happens. There's something freeing about realizing that you don't need to be fearless to grow. You just need to be willing. Willing to try. Everything. Willing to learn. Willing to fail forward. Willing to see yourself beyond your current circumstances. Willing to believe in a version of you that you haven't fully met yet. Everything. Willing to embrace the temporary discomfort that leads to long-term strength. Everything. Growth is less about confidence and more about courage. The courage to take action even before you fully trust yourself. Consider a person learning to play the guitar. Everything. The early days are awkward. Their fingers hurt. The strings buzz. The chords sound messy. And if they judged their future ability based on those first few attempts, they would quit. Everything. But the mindset of constant growth says, keep going. This is the price of competence. And slowly the fingers learn, the ears adjust. The awkwardness fades. Everything. What was once difficult becomes natural. That is the magic of growth. It transforms the impossible into the effortless. Your life works the same way. Everything. Whatever feels hard now will not feel hard forever, unless you keep quitting. Old patterns lose power the moment you stop feeding them. Everything. Mental barriers crumble the moment you challenge them. You are not stuck. You are simply standing at the doorway of your next level, and the key to unlocking it is consistency. Everything. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is changing your question from, "Why is this happening to me?" to, "What is this moment trying to teach me?" That single shift turns struggle into wisdom. Everything. Pain into purpose. Setbacks into strength. When you adopt the mindset of constant growth, you begin to see life differently. Everything. You begin to notice that even the most uncomfortable seasons are shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and more capable. If you've ever watched a tree grow, everything, you'll notice something fascinating. Trees don't grow only when conditions are perfect. They grow through storms, through harsh sunlight, through strong winds. Everything. And those storms don't weaken the tree. They strengthen its roots. They force it to anchor deeper. Humans grow the same way. Everything. The environments you resist the most often produce the resilience you need the most. What feels tough today is secretly developing the inner strength required for your future. Everything. Perhaps you're going through a season of uncertainty. Maybe life feels heavy. Maybe you're not where you thought you'd be by now. But growth doesn't follow a straight path. Everything. Sometimes you grow upward, visible to everyone. Sometimes you grow inward, invisible but essential. And that inward growth, the mindset, the resilience, everything, the belief, is what ultimately determines how high you can rise later. People who adopt the mindset of constant growth understand this deeply. They don't rush the process, everything, but they also don't stay still. They move forward, even in small steps. They are willing to be beginners repeatedly, because beginners are the ones who evolve. Everything. They don't fear being wrong, because being wrong is just the first step to being right. They don't fear failure, because failure is feedback. They don't fear change, everything, because change is where they find their power. When you begin seeing your mind as a tool instead of a barrier, everything shifts. You stop letting fear dictate your choices. Everything. You stop letting your past dictate your identity. You stop letting temporary discomfort dictate your long-term destiny. Instead, everything. You start choosing actions that your future self will thank you for. You start seeing possibility where you once saw limitations. You start trusting yourself to handle whatever comes next. Everything, and slowly you begin to feel something powerful: momentum. Everything. Not the kind that comes from results. That will come later. But the internal momentum that comes from knowing you're growing, stretching, evolving. Everything. The kind that makes you feel unstoppable, not because everything is easy, but because you are becoming someone who can handle the hard. That is the mindset of constant growth. It is not loud. Everything. It is not flashy. It is not a sudden transformation. It is a quiet, steady decision you make every day to improve, to rise, to evolve, even when it's easier not to. And little by little, everything. That decision reshapes your life from the inside out. Reinvention is not a moment. It's not a single choice or a dramatic transformation that happens overnight. Everything. Reinvention is a lifelong strategy, a way of moving through the world with your eyes open, your spirit awake, and your courage intact. Everything. It's the quiet decision you make every morning to not be who you were yesterday if that version of you is no longer serving the life you're trying to build. And the truth is, everything. Life will force you to evolve whether you're ready or not. Jobs change, people change, industries shift, opportunities appear and disappear. The question is never whether change will come. Everything. The question is whether you are prepared to rise with it instead of shrinking beneath it. Most people don't realize this until they've already been left behind. Everything. They wake up years later wondering how they lost their spark, how they fell out of alignment with their goals, how the world outpaced them while they stayed comfortable. Everything. But you're here now, listening, because somewhere inside you there is a fire that refuses to die. A whisper that says, there's more for you. Don't settle. Everything. Reinvent. And that whisper is powerful because it's the voice of the future calling your name. Think about the moments in life when you felt stuck. Not broken. Not defeated. Everything. Just stuck. Like you were living the same day on repeat. Nothing new. Nothing exciting. Just a quiet heaviness that made you feel like you were watching your life instead of living it. Everything. That feeling isn't failure. That feeling is a signal. It's your inner compass pointing toward your next evolution. Reinvention begins the moment you stop ignoring that signal. Everything. I once knew a man who worked the same job for 15 years. He wasn't passionate about it, but it was stable. Everything. The kind of job people hold on to because it's good enough. Yet every night he came home exhausted, not from the work itself, but from the slow suffocation of staying small. Everything. He felt himself fading, losing pieces of who he wanted to be. One day his company downsized, and he was let go. Most people would see that as a disaster. He saw it as a wake-up call. Everything. Instead of desperately trying to rejoin the same path that had drained him for years, he chose to rethink everything. Everything. He took 6 months to learn skills he'd always been curious about, but never had the courage to pursue. He built new habits, met new people, explored new interests. By the end of that year, everything. He wasn't just employed again, he was alive again. He didn't just find a better job, he found a better version of himself. That's reinvention. Not escape, not crisis, everything. But transformation fueled by clarity and courage. Reinvention doesn't always require losing everything. Sometimes it starts with a single question. Everything. Who do I need to become for the life I want? And the moment you ask it honestly, your life begins to shift. You start seeing where your habits don't match your goals. Everything. Where your mindset doesn't match your ambition. Where your environment doesn't match your dreams. And those realizations aren't meant to shame you. They're meant to guide you. Everything. Perhaps you've held on to old beliefs about who you are. The shy one, the unlucky one, the overthinker, the one who never finishes what they start. But those labels were never the truth. Everything. They were only chapters you lived through, not the story you're destined to stay in. Everything. Reinvention means breaking the identity that life accidentally assigned to you and replacing it with the identity you consciously choose. Everything. It means upgrading the story you tell yourself so the world can finally see the person you were meant to become. Everything. Some people fear reinvention because they think it requires dramatic change, quitting everything, moving across the world, or starting from zero. Everything. But real reinvention often happens quietly. It's in the books you decide to read, the people you choose to spend time with, the habits you build when no one is watching. Everything. The boundaries you set because you finally understand your worth. Small shifts that, over time, create a completely different life. There's a powerful truth you must embrace. Everything. You are allowed to outgrow everything. Your past, your environment, your relationships, even your old dreams. Growth isn't betrayal. Growth is loyalty to the person you are becoming. Everything. Maybe you used to chase things you no longer desire. Maybe you believed in limits you no longer accept. Maybe you tolerated behaviors you now recognize as destructive. Everything. Reinvention gives you permission to rewrite the script, to say, I'm not that person anymore, and to stand firmly in your new direction. And yet, everything. Reinvention isn't always comfortable. It challenges your patterns. It disrupts your routines. It forces you to confront the truth that staying the same can be more dangerous than changing. Everything. Comfort is seductive, but comfort can also be a cage. When you commit to evolving, you break the bars of that cage one decision at a time. Think about a snake shedding its skin. Everything. It doesn't resist the process. It doesn't cling to the old skin out of nostalgia. It simply recognizes that what once protected it is now holding it back. You too. Everything. Must learn to shed your old layers, the fear, the self-doubt, the habits built from survival instead of growth. Everything. Reinvention demands that you leave behind the version of yourself that no longer matches your vision. To evolve, you need 3 things: awareness, courage, and consistency. Everything. Awareness shows you what needs to change. Courage allows you to begin the change, and consistency ensures the change becomes permanent. Reinvention is not a burst of motivation. Everything. It is a steady climb. But every step forward, no matter how small, becomes part of your transformation. Picture your life 5 years from now. Not randomly, intentionally. Everything. Who do you want to be physically, emotionally, financially, spiritually? What kind of discipline will that future version of you have? What boundaries? What confidence? What skills? Everything. The clearer you get, the easier it becomes to align your actions with your evolution. Reinvention isn't about guessing your way forward. It's about designing your way forward. Everything. You might think reinvention is risky, but the greater risk is refusing to evolve. The world will not slow down so you can catch up. Technology is changing, industries are shifting. Everything. Opportunities are reshaping themselves every day. Reinvention keeps you adaptable, relevant, and prepared. When you evolve continuously, you don't fear change, you lead it. Everything. There's a quiet power that forms inside you when you commit to becoming better, not because life forced you, but because you chose to. It's the power of alignment. Everything. The power of self-respect, the power of knowing you will never again settle for less than the highest version of yourself. When you reinvent yourself, everything, you stop being a passenger and start being the architect of your future. And perhaps the most beautiful part of reinvention is this: there is no final version of you. Everything. You will evolve again and again. You will break through limits you once thought were permanent. You will rise into versions of yourself you never imagined. You will discover new strengths, everything, new passions, new paths. Reinvention is not the end. It's the beginning of every new chapter that makes your life worth living. You are not too late. You are not behind. Everything. You are right on time for your next evolution. The world may be moving fast, but so are you now. You are shedding old layers, stepping into new power, and choosing growth over comfort. Everything. You're not waiting for life to change. You're becoming the change. And from this moment forward, you will never stop evolving.